This lab is going to be about network hardening using Amazon Inspector and AWS Systems Manager. The objectives for this lab are going to be to configure Amazon Inspector, to run an agentless network audit, investigate the scan result, and finally to update the security groups for any vulnerabilities that might have been found during the investigative during the scans when we take a look at the scan results. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be doing here is we're going to be adding a couple of tags, and by the way, we have a couple of EC2 instances here already, so then it's easier for us to work with this lab. Okay, so let's take a look at what EC2 instances we have here. And we have two instances. One is the Bastion server and the other one is the app server. Okay, so now that we have that, we are going to let's work with the Bastion server, and we're going to modify its tags. So in order to modify the tags of the Bastion server, I select the server, and then right now, if you can see, if I don't select anything, I don't see any information here. But if I select here, I can see details about the EC2 instance for that I am selecting. So I'm going to go to the tags, and then I'm going to add a new tag. And so I'm going to go to manage tags, and I'm going to add a new tag, and that tag is going to be, I'm going to add a tag. I'm going to call it security scan, and the value that I'm going to give it is going to be true, and I'm going to save it, and that's that. By the way, if you take a look at the tags that we have on this server, we have some unusual tags here. Do you have this tag here that it says key is AWS colon CloudFormation stack ID. Pretty much these resources were created by using CloudFormation, um, and then they were created so then we would be able to use them instead of creating them for the first time. The environment was created for us, so then we can just start using it. Okay, so we have taken care of that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to remember we're going to be using a Amazon Inspector. So I'm going to go to the Inspector. Here is Amazon Inspector, and then what I'm going to do is let's see if I can switch to Inspector Classic. Okay, Amazon Inspector Classic. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to switch to Inspector Classic. In order to do that, I need to expand this menu here, and you can see that we have switched to Inspector Classic, and that's how we switch to it. Next thing we're going to do is, well, we're going to start using Inspector, so let's get started. And the next thing we're going to be doing is, pretty much this is some of what we're doing, so we're going to select Advanced Setup, and we're going to define an assessment target. In the define assessment target section, what I'm going to do is, for the name of this assessment, I'm going to enter the name, let's see, I can use network dash audit. Okay, and then well, I'm going to make sure that all my EC2 instances are selected. So that is that, and the keys. Okay, underboard audit for tags. Well, I don't have anything about tags yet, so we'll have to go to the next and see what we can find there. So we have this. I'm going to continue to the next. I haven't seen anything about tags yet. Okay. Here we have define an assessment target. Okay, so I'm going to edit this thing. Oh, EC2 instances, all EC2 instances. Well, actually, all of them are selected right now. I need to define an assessment template. Define an assessment template, so I need to go to this one. In the assessment template, what I'm going to be doing is in the for rules packages. Let's see where the rules packages are. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to only leave the network reachability as part of the scan, so but anything else I'm going to remove. So I'm going to remove the common vulnerabilities. Okay, I'm going to remove this, this, and this. So I'm leaving only network reachability, and then the duration is going to be 15 minutes, which is here. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the assessment schedule. Okay, so I'm going to clear the assessment schedule, so this doesn't run every so often. I just want to run it once, kind of like one time, okay? Now, once I have done this, I'm only going to be testing reachability pretty much. Next, and finally, I just go to create, and that has taken care of creating that. So that is that. Okay, as we can see, Amazon Inspector, these are the assessment runs. It's getting ready to start. This is the name of the template that I defined earlier. And so we see what findings it obtains. Okay, so this is going to take between 3 to 5 minutes to complete. So we're going to have to wait for that time to go by, and we'll come back once we begin to see some results. Well, as we can see here, after a couple of minutes, it says that the analysis has been completed, which is great. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, it seems that there were 3 findings. In order to take a look at what those findings are, I need to expand these by clicking here, and then we can see what those findings are. Okay, because I want to see the status of this run, I'm going to show status. And it says Amazon Inspector assessed network audit for 33 seconds. Okay, so it's relatively quick, which is good. Okay, so pretty much I saw that there were 3 status findings, and it seems, well, that's what we wanted to see. Okay, one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click in the findings section, and then in here we can see that there were several findings, one of a severity of high, another one with severity of medium, and the one with a severity of informational. Of course, the one with the highest severity is going to be the one that should be dealt with first. Then after that, taking care of the medium, and finally take a look at what the informational was. But that's pretty much the findings that this got. By the way, Amazon, in many cases, you install an agent for the inspector to do its thing, but in this particular case, we did it agentless, which is great because I didn't have to install anything on that EC2 instance that was evaluated for some sort of vulnerabilities or anything that was not kind of like a best practice. Okay, so let's take a look at what those findings were. So pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this high security and going to try to figure out what is it that it found. So we found, okay, so in this instance, the TC port 23, which is associated with Telnet, was found to be open. And as you can imagine, that could be a potential problem. Okay, and it says here you can install the inspector agent on this instance and run the assessment, check for any processes listening on this port. So if there were any processes listening on that port, then we would be able to find it, but for that we had to install the agent. Okay, but that was the main idea about this, that's the reason why we had that. For the medium, let's see what that was. The issue was that we have port 22, if you remember TCP port 22. This is related to the SSH protocol. Um, and then the problem with this is it's reachable pretty much by everyone on the internet. And I guess, yes, that's a problem, because we would rather, it would be preferable if you were able to connect from one specific IP address instead of like from potentially all of the computers out there on the internet. But that's the medium security issue that was found there. Okay, by the way, this not only tells you what the problems are, like for instance, if I go to this high, if I expand it, it tells me what the problem is that it found. Again, TCP port 23, which is associated with Telnet, was open. It can also tell me what I should do about it. It says, it gives me a recommendation to remediate this problem. It says you can edit the security group, which is the one that is associated with that EC2 instance that happens to have port 23 open. So basically what I could do is I could take care of that right now, and pretty much what I'm going to do is I could either do it from here. The good thing about doing it from here is this is telling me exactly the ID of that security group where I need to remove port 23 and just get rid of it. So that's what I'm going to do. Go directly to that security group. It's going to be of course, it was going to be the security group for the Bastion host server, and then I'm going to take a look at the inbound rules, because that's where we have the issue. As you can see, port 23 is open, and that is a vulnerability. We don't want that to be there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to edit these inbound rules, and I'm going to get rid of port 23. This is port 23. Again, this is related to Telnet. We don't want that port open on this machine. So right now I just took care of it. So that pretty much took care of that particular situation. Now the thing that I need to do is, remember the problem that I have with this the security group attached to this EC2 instance is that it's potentially accepting SSH traffic from all the computers out there on the internet, and that's not a good idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to restrict the access to this security group only to the IP address that I'm using at home. In that case, it's going to be this one, okay? And I'm going to say SSH from home computer. Okay, and then that way I will be able to access that system from my own computer. Okay, so that has taken care of that security group. I took care of deleting the port 23 inbound rule, and I also changed the SSH rule, inbound rule, such that I can only initiate traffic from my own EC2 instance. So pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate back to the inspector, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the assessment templates, which are here. Assessment template. Let me see. Okay, there it is. This is the one that I did a moment ago. So pretty much what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to be running this template again. This is the one that found the problems, by the way, earlier. So if I run it again, what is going to happen is, because I took remediation actions to fix the problem, then those issues shouldn't be there anymore. So I'm going to just go ahead and run it and see what happens once this Once the we can see that the success in the assessment has been run, so now we just have to wait. It's going to be collecting data. We're going to wait some certain amount of time. I'll be back once that has completed and show you the results of that audit. Okay, and by the way, what I can do is, in the meantime, what I can do is I can go to the assessment runs and then just wait to see what happens. Remember, one of these was submitted earlier. This is being submitted a few minutes ago. It is collecting, it's at the collecting data stage, but I'm going to have to wait some more time before the analysis is complete, and then we can see what happened to the vulnerabilities. Again, there were three findings. One was like really serious, critical. The other one wasn't as much, but I took care of both of those. The one with the highest priority and the one with the medium priority. But we're going to take a look at that when this has completed. Oh, and by the way, the type of vulnerability scanning that we performed in this particular lab was network reachability, which means how reachable is that machine, and if it's reachable, uh, is it reachable? Do we have open ports that we shouldn't have open, like port 23? And then the other question is, if we have a port that we do intend to use for any particular reason, like port 22 for SSH, are we only allowing only like a smaller range of IP addresses to be able to access it, or what? In this case, we noticed that we had it, that port was probably wide open to any computer out there on the internet to be able to access, to potentially access it. Of course, if they don't have the private key that is used to validate your your credentials whenever you SSH into that machine, you won't be able to access it. But still, it's a vulnerability risk if you allow it to be open to everybody who can potentially access it. Okay, by the way, I've been waiting for a while for this to go from collecting data to analysis complete, and it never completes it. So I assume that, well, it ran fine. I don't think it found any issue with anything. If I click on show status, it's telling me that it's been running for 11 minutes, which is a long time. And it's collecting telemetry from two agents. I have two EC2 instances. It has run 349 telemetry. It has received 349 telemetry messages. But I guess I can assume that this has been complete. I don't think that there were any well, these findings were the old findings, by the way. These are not the most recent findings. But let me see. So if I open, let me try to refresh this, see if anything has changed. Nothing has changed. So if I expand this, if I go down here, if I click on show status, let's see. Well, still doesn't say anything. If I expand this to take a look at any issues, yeah, we don't see any. We don't seem to see anything here. Show agents. Well, I have two instances that are being checked. But I would say that it seems that it ran fine. Unfortunately, again, it did not seem. I fixed the two problems that it had, so I assume that in this case everything ran just fine. Okay. Okay, so now that I have done this, and this has passed all the tests, there's nothing else to do. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the Bastion server. So let me go to the Bastion server. Remember, the Bastion server, the Bastion host, is a system that you can use. So then, if I need to access this app server, instead of accessing it directly, I can access the Bastion server, the Bastion host, and from the Bastion server, the Bastion host, I can jump to the app server by establishing an SSH session. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the Bastion host by I'm going to start using Systems Manager. Okay, so for this Bastion host, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to security, and then this is the security group that is being used on that machine. And I guess I'm just going to delete that. Oh, let me see. I need to edit the inbound rules. Well, that's what I did. This only has access on that port, for my specific IP address. So pretty much I'm just going to stop that EC2 instance. Well, I have still this. Well, I'm going to get rid of this SSH rule, by the way. So in other words, I'm not allowing SSH traffic into it, and I'm saving this. So the main idea here is as we're going to find out, we can access the console of this machine remotely, even though we don't have an SSH. We don't have the SSH port inbound rule open on that server. But yet I still will be able to access that machine remotely. So now pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to be stopping this EC2 instance. So I'm going to go to instance state, and then I'm going to click stop, and I stop that EC2 instance. And next what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to next what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to the app server that you see here, and I'm going to connect to it by using Session Manager, but I'll be showing that in a moment. Okay, so going back to the so I stopped the Bastion server. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to access the application server by means of going to the connect button, and instead of, remember, I don't have SSH enabled anymore. That port has been removed. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to use Session Manager. The reason why we'll be able to use Session Manager is because I believe that I have a role attached to the EC2 instance to the app server, so that I will be able to so that it can communicate with Systems Manager. So I'm going to try to establish a connection by doing what I just did. I went to the connect, and then I went to Session Manager, and then so it's opening a Session Manager. As you can see, I'm logged in already into this machine. The interesting thing is that I'm not logging as EC2-user. That's the one that we use whenever we SSH into a machine like this in the past. But in this case, this is a user that was created. If I type in who am I, we can see that the user is SSM-user. So it's not the normal user that we use for the EC2-user. This is the Systems Manager user that's the account that we're using to log in into this machine. So we can do that, and then I'm going to issue a couple of commands. I'm going to do cd home. So I'm going to go to the home directory of this user. You can see it displays the same information, and then if I print what's the working directory, we should be able to see probably that we're in the home directory of that user. So we're in the home directory of the SSM-user, which is the one that we found out when we typed in who am I. And that's pretty much what we have regarding that one. Now let me go back to the Amazon Inspector. The only problem is that I don't have let me see. The problem that I have with Inspector is that Let me see. Assessment runs. Oh, finally, it completed. It says that it had found there were two findings. Well, it seems that once I shut down that machine, you can see the first one here is the one that happened earlier. That's the one that had three findings, and this is the one that just finished just a moment ago, it seems. But let's see what it found out. So if I click on this, there were so many things, but it seems that it didn't find. It seems only. Let me see. There's a high severity. What was the high severity? Um, Severity is associated with telnet. Well, I don't know why it's still showing that the one. Oh well, this is the one at 1008. This is the. I know this already, so this is nothing new for me. This is the one that I'm interested in. The one at 1019. I click here. It says that there were two findings. One was medium, another one was high. The high, if I expand it, I don't know why it still says that port 23 uh, is like that. Let me take a quick look at that EC2 instance security group. Again, that EC2 instance has been shut down, so well, right now I'm filtering only the running ones, so that's why I don't see that one. But if I click here, again, once I select an EC2 instance, I can see the details. I go to the security. I go to security group. Once I go, and again in this security group, I think I remove yeah, there are no inbound rules. So in other words, this machine is unreachable in any way from the internet. It can initiate traffic to the outside, but it cannot receive any traffic from the outside. Okay, so I guess I took care of that. We just saw what the directory was that was used for this session of part of systems manager. Session manager allows you to create a remote terminal session into the EC2 instance. In this particular case, I'm connected to the application manager. By the way, if we take a look at the role that is attached to this role has to be associated with systems manager because that's how we were able to access it. So I'm waiting to see what I get from here. And let's see. So let's find out a little bit more about that role. What does that role do? You can see that this role, the role that has this weird name, well, it has a SSM role that tells you right there that it's a systems manager role, and the policy, that was attached to this role contains this particular AWS managed policy, which is this is the one that that allows the communication between systems manager and the EC2 instance. That's why I was able to do a sessions manager. If this had not been there, I wouldn't have been able to establish a, a systems sessions manager session into that EC2 instance. I guess this was it. I hope that you found this interesting. But yeah, this is pretty much it. So I'm done with this lab, and I think we were able to fix a couple of errors by using AWS Inspector, and then we were able to remote into the app server. The reason why that happened was because there was a role attached to the app server, and that role has a policy attached to it, and that policy includes the Amazon Systems Manager instance core, which is a key. It's something key as part of this policy for it. So If you attach it to an EC2 instance, then Systems Manager will have access to that EC2 instance, and that's the main idea about this. Okay.